Shana Lewis. I now give the floor to Ms. Marta Ama Akia-Pobi.
Madam President, for too long, the conflict in Sudan has gravely imperiled lives of Sudanese civilians. Security conditions remain dire, marked by shifting front lines, increased and often indiscriminate aerial assaults by both the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces, and continuous attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure, including hospitals. The warring parties appear unrelenting in their resolve to pursue military objectives. The fighting shows no signs of abating. In recent weeks, the focus of the conflict has shifted once more to the Darfur and Kordofan regions. The Kordofans are increasingly emerging as an epicenter of fighting. The warring parties have reportedly exchanged heavy drone strikes and artillery fire on multiple fronts. El Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan, and one of the largest cities in the region, is likely to remain a key flashpoint in the coming weeks. De-escalation is urgently needed. Madam President, we are particularly worried about the growing use of advanced weaponry, including long-range drones. This has expanded hostilities into previously stable areas of the country. Aerial attacks in populated areas have already caused significant civilian casualties and mass displacement. This trend is likely to intensify through the rainy season as movement on the ground becomes more difficult. Madam President, the conflict in Sudan is having far-reaching consequences that extend well beyond its borders. Recent reports of violent clashes at the tri-border zone of Sudan, Libya, and Egypt, involving the Sudanese armed forces, the rapid support forces, and forces affiliated with the Libyan National Army, are deeply concerning and mark a serious escalation. Abyei has also seen an increased presence of armed rapid support forces personnel, exacerbating the already fragile security situation in the Abyei area. The rapid support forces are also present in northeastern Central African Republic, where they are recruiting. Just days ago, this council condemned a recent attack on MINUSCA peacekeepers by suspected Sudanese armed elements. One peacekeeper was killed, and another one was seriously injured. We cannot afford further regional instability and spillover conflict. Madam President, as the situation on the ground in the Sudan further deteriorates, grave violations of international humanitarian and human rights law continue. We are horrified by widespread sexual violence, including against children, and attacks on humanitarian workers. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has documented a tripling of arbitrary killings of civilians between February and April. This increase was largely due to numerous incidents of summary executions in Khartoum, reportedly carried out by the Sudanese armed forces and its allies on people suspected of being collaborators with the rapid support forces, including on the basis of ethnic identity. Meanwhile, we remain deeply concerned about the situation in El Fasher, which continues to be sieged by the rapid support forces. On 15 June, the rapid support forces launched yet another attack on the city, following months of increased mobilization of fighters, including the recruitment of children across Darfur. entrenched impunity is fueling these and other gross human rights violations and abuses. All parties to the conflict must be held accountable for their actions. Moreover, the commitments of warring parties have made to protect civilians, including in the Jeddah Declaration of May 2023, must be translated into concrete action. Last week, the Security Council heard from our humanitarian colleagues about the dire situation. We are pursuing a predictable and time-bound humanitarian pause to facilitate safe humanitarian movements into and out of areas affected by ongoing fighting, beginning with El Fasher, and allow civilians to leave voluntarily and securely. We will continue to urge the parties to make progress on measures that strengthen the protection of civilians without preconditions. Madam President, following his swearing-in on 31st May, Prime Minister Idris set about to form a new government, dismissing the previous cabinet on 1st June. On 19th June, he outlined in a national address the structure of the new government he is seeking to form, labeling it the Government of Hope. He announced that it would consist of 22 ministries comprising technocrats selected based on competence and professional expertise, with no political affiliations. Meanwhile, divisions persist within the Tassis alliance, led by the Rapid Support Forces, over the composition of the planned parallel government in areas under its control. We encourage all parties to preserve Sudan's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity as a critical element for a sustainable solution to this crisis. In this regard, it is essential to have civilian leadership for the shaping of a political consensus and formulating an inclusive vision for the restoration of a peaceful, civilian-led transition. Madam President, since my last briefing, the Secretary General's personal envoy for the Sudan, Ramtan Lamamra, has further intensified his engagements with regional and international actors to help chart a path toward ending the conflict. The personal envoy remains in close contact with the warring parties, including in efforts to convene discussions in proximity format on strengthening the protection of civilians. Following his visit to Port Sudan in April, a team led by the personal envoy's office is poised to travel to Port Sudan to prepare the next steps. The personal envoy stands ready to engage the Rapid Support Forces in a similar format in due course. Personal envoy Lamamra has also spoken to Prime Minister Idris following his appointment. He emphasized the importance of advancing efforts towards an inclusive political resolution and offered to explore issues of mutual concern and cooperation. The personal envoy also remains in direct and regular contact with a broad array of civilian groups in recognition of the indispensable role they play in finding a way out of the current crisis, and most importantly, in shaping Sudan's future transition processes. It is clear that member state support and leverage are indispensable to spur meaningful progress on the ground. I urge this Council, once again, to unite in lending full support to Personal Envoy Lamamra's efforts and to use its influence with the parties and their external backers to press for a genuine commitment to dialogue and de-escalation. Madam President, the United Nations is deeply committed to harnessing the collective strength of multilateral organizations in the coordination of mediation efforts. The high-level meeting between the United Nations, the African Union, and the League of Arab States in Baghdad on 16th May marked the starting point of closer cooperation between key multilateral players on Sudan, which will also, moving forward, include the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD. Yesterday, the fourth consultative meeting on enhancing coordination of peace initiatives and efforts for Sudan was hosted by the European Union in Brussels. This marked another important meeting in support of enhanced coordination and strengthened political support. This mechanism brings together multilateral organizations and key member states working on mediation in Sudan. We are in a process of finalizing consultations for its fifth edition to be co-organized jointly by the African Union and United Nations in Addis Ababa. Madam President, as conflict deepens and spreads around the world, it is time to take concrete steps to end the senseless suffering of the Sudanese people. Too many lives have been lost. Too much trauma has been inflicted, and the risk of regional conflagration is too great to allow this conflict to fester any longer. I call on the wider international community to work together, for our multilateral partners to join hands, and for the Council to lead the way in resolving the conflict in Sudan. I thank you.
I thank Ms. Poby.